Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. For meeting for the purpose of the Committee of the Whole to discuss the review of the fiscal year 2015 budget. At this time, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll. Oh, sorry, it's 8:30 p.m. somewhere, but it's actually 10:15 in Elmhurst. Clerk
Okay.
Spencer.
Continue. Okay, proceed, I guess. Gutenkopf. Here. Here. Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader, absent. Palumski.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Conquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner. Wagner.
Here.
12 present, 1 absent.
12 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. We're officially in Committee of the Whole. Any announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. Clerk Spencer, did we put out a comment sheet?
We did have a comment sheet out for the Committee of the Whole meeting, but
We're going to wing it
I didn't get it.
at 10:15. Is there anybody at this time who wishes to voice any public comments? I think I'm addressing you, Mr. Baker, specifically. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing no one's hand raised, or we're going to move on to business before the committee, which is the fiscal budget. At this time, I will turn it over to City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Just to kind of set the tone for tonight, what we're going to try to do tonight is get through the library issue and then turn it back to the council and see if they want to continue on from there. I'd like to give some opening comments and then, Mayor, turn it back to you. So, this, as always, our budget focuses on highest quality service for the lowest cost. And this year, the budget does not include any new positions. We continue to use a hybrid system of full-time, part-time, and contract employees to best serve our residents and to keep expenditures down. We also continue to review each position as it opens up in an effort to reduce future costs of pension and other benefits that are associated with full-time employees. One of the tools that we use when planning the budget and understanding the needs of the residents is the biannual citizen survey. The City of Elmhurst has conducted this survey every other year since 1994 to gather residents' opinions, determine satisfaction with community services. Key results of the 2014 survey that impacted the proposed 2015 budget include improvements needed with street conditions, primarily due to the recent harsh winter. Significant grant funds have been awarded to the city for street rehabilitation projects in 2015 and 2016. The survey also highlighted residents' increased concern regarding stormwater management. To that end, city staff has worked to develop the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive flood mitigation plan, and the goal is to provide the maximum flood protection to the most people in the most cost-effective manner. Obviously, the Public Works Committee has been hard at work at that as well. The council has approved a stormwater project prioritization action plan and has identified 4 projects for that. The 2015 and 2016 projected budgets include $13.6 million for these projects, with an additional $3 million budgeted in fiscal years 2017 through 2019 for stormwater management project. City staff also continues to research and pursue grant funds for these projects. We may further amend this draft budget to include strategic property buyouts for stormwater help. As suggested by Mayor Morley and Alderman Honquist earlier, the Finance Committee is reviewing the use of the fund balance toward this goal. Establishing a strategic plan development process is also a goal for 2015. City Council will be working with an independent facilitator to develop the strategic plan process that will allow the city's leadership, residents, and key stakeholders to logically and collaboratively identify and establish short-term and long-term goals to realize a shared vision for the city. Initial work on this project has begun, and the project is expected to be completed in the first quarter of 2015. Now, to turn to revenues, proposed revenues for the city of Elmhurst for fiscal year 2015 total $126,404,521. As indicated on the chart on page 7, the largest revenue source is taxes, including sales tax, property tax, and utility tax, comprising 37% of total revenues. Service charges comprise 21% of total revenues and include $21.2 million for water and sewer service charges. In the general fund, which is the major operating fund of the city, the proposed budget expenditures are $59,095,892 for the 2015 fiscal year. Excuse me, I'm trying to get through this too quick. Proposed revenues to the general fund are $59,202,617 for 2015. This provides for a contribution to fund balance of $106,725 for a projected general fund balance at the end of fiscal year 15 of $19.1 million. The sales tax is the largest revenue source, as I said. It's the 1% sales tax, and it's projected to increase at the rate of 3% compared to the prior year. Sales tax remains the greatest single source of revenue, excluding the police and fire pension levies. As we learned earlier this evening, the city has taken significant action to stabilize revenue sources to the general fund, and we've been able to balance our reliance through economic development efforts to recruit other major sales tax generators such as Mariano's and Whole Foods. This reality must be recognized as a significant factor in reviewing the city's general funds, general revenues and expenditures, and in planning for the future. This fact also supports the city council's general fund balance goals to allow that fund balance to cushion the city's revenue loss in a struggling economy, the loss of a commercial business, or the loss of a local sales tax associated with internet sales not be stopped at the federal level. The food and beverage tax is projected to increase 3% as well, for a proposed budget of $1.1 million. And this budget contains a property tax levy which would increase 2% of the general fund. This is a small, the Finance Committee is discussing this, and the final levy amount is still to be determined. The state sales income tax is split, just as a reminder, with 80% of the shares to the general fund, to the capital improvement fund, while 20% is in the general fund. And that is projected to increase 2%. Local motor fuel tax, which is our 1.5 cents per gallon, reflects a 1.5% increase, and these funds are designated for stormwater system improvements. The city utility tax is a mix of telecommunications, electric use, and natural gas use taxes. The telecommunications tax is projected to remain flat this year due to a number of factors, such as wireless companies and DSL providers. The electric tax is proposed to increase 1%, and we've looked at the gas use tax as a 3% increase in this budget. The rubbish collection revenue merely reflects the terms and pricing of the current contract. And licensing and permits, something that Assistant Manager Kopp touched on earlier. The permit fee budget is projected at $2 million and contemplates 160 new homes and several commercial projects for next year. Vehicle license fees are also a significant source of revenue, roughly $1.3 million annually, and all proceeds from the vehicle license sales are designated for street improvements. I've spoken with a couple of aldermen regarding the vehicle license fee or city sticker program, and the Finance Committee will be discussing that in the near future from a referral. Other significant revenue sources include water and sewer rate increases. We all understand that the water increases were imposed on us by the DuPage Water Commission a few years ago, and of course by the City of Chicago onto the Water Commission. We did undertake a comprehensive water and sewer rate study, and a significant outcome of that study was development of the capital investment recovery charge to allow for funding of debt service costs based on meter size and elimination of the minimum user charge. Another significant revenue source is the parking system. We're projecting no fee increases for this time, and the Addison parking deck, of course, is anticipated to be completed in 2015. We will continue to discuss the possible changes to the permit, employee, and shopper parking space arrangement as this deck comes online. Regarding MFT funds, these are state funds that are determined by population and vary from year to year. Elmhurst uses these funds to pay for various street-related uses such as road salt and other commodities. And then we have our TIF, our redevelopment areas. TIF 1, which is the Central Business District. The property tax revenue collected for the express purpose of financing public side responsibilities in this TIF. Due to declining EAVs, we anticipate that this is a relatively flat revenue. TIF 2, again, revenues accruing to this fund are anticipated to be flat due to no new growth anticipated. And TIF 3, we do anticipate a little bit of an increase there. Of course, we have the expenditure going out for the land acquisition that we just talked about in City Council. And then another expense on the capital side, not TIF 3, but is a salt dome carryover, non-TIF expense, but related to that property. Lastly, in TIF 4, only a small property tax increment was received in 2014, and due to a projected declining EAV, a small increment is projected for 2015. Overall, the EAV in Elmhurst continues to drop slightly, which was somewhat expected due to the economy and timing of property assessments. However, looking at the real estate market, home prices appear to be climbing, with homes turning over in a timely fashion. However, the city budget will not realize this effect for another year or so. As a reminder, the remaining calendar for the budget, we start tonight with the budget review, and we will continue for the next 3 meetings in this fashion to move through the different departments of the budget. We project that on November 3rd, we'll have the public hearing for the operating budget. We will also have the truth in taxation for the levy. I'm sorry, excuse me. Marilyn's correcting me that we've already taken care of that. Thank you. December, we will have the, hopefully that first meeting in December, we'll have the operating budget approved and also the tax levy, and then public hearing, and then in mid-December, the property tax levy approved by City Council. So as we heard from our financial advisor earlier, the city stands in a strong position. We believe that this is a sound fiscal plan for Elmhurst for the next fiscal year, and certainly request the council's positive consideration. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Marilyn Gaston and Tom Trezine, all of the staff, the department directors, for their input and cooperation during the budget process. Mayor, back to you.
Okay, before we dive into the library, just a couple things I wanted to say before we get started. I think we've all been through this before. It's my intent, my goal, to keep these meetings no later than 10:30. I got about 3 minutes before I break that goal, but that's my intent from here on out. I believe that decision-making gets a little daffy after that, so we're going to target that. I'm going to ask staff to be flexible and recognize that if we're, if we're at 10 after 10, I want you to take a look at what you think you can get through and what you can't. Staff typically, as we're all aware, publishes the schedule of things they're hoping to cover. I think tonight's a little ambitious, which is what I've come to note from staff, but that's fine. As I said, I'm asking staff to be flexible as we try to wrap this stuff up before 10:30 this evening, accepted. As always, I would encourage council and staff to utilize the circle back list, which is a process in which, after we discuss an item to a certain extent, if questions or concerns are not satisfied, we put it on the circle back list for further discussion. Also gives staff time to regroup and possibly potentially answer questions that could not be answered on the spur of the moment. The other thing I will say is, in an effort to speed things along, I would also encourage city council members to continue to email and communicate questions to city staff. This gives them an opportunity to potentially provide a more comprehensive answer and maybe even a speedy answer, which is all good when it comes to these meetings. Last thing I'll say is that we have plenty of time to get this done. We're at the end of October and or middle to end of October. We really have 8 weeks according to the schedule. It's not unheard of for council to request maybe a budget meeting on a committee night or even extend a vote here or there. So we have plenty of time to get through this, but I look forward to your diligence. City Manager Robowski, with that, I will turn it over to you. And agenda item B.
Thank you. With that, I will turn it over to the library.
Okay,
Good evening.
welcome.
It's a pleasure to meet with you tonight to review the library's budget. I am Linda Wheaton, President of the Board of Trustees. I would like to begin by introducing two other trustees who are here this evening, Bill Shanklin and Sue Sadowski. Library Director Mary Beth Camp is also sitting here beside me. When I spoke to you last year, we were in the beginning stages of replacing the audio-visual equipment in the meeting rooms. I'm happy to report that the project is finished, and Elmhurst businesses and residents are benefiting from the state-of-the-art technology. New features include a high-definition projection system, interactive touchscreen Mondo pads, high-definition video conferencing, enhanced audio equipment, and Apple TV. Elmhurst's many organizations and local groups need places to meet so that they may continue to add to the quality of life here in Elmhurst. These meeting rooms provide that space. In addition, in the last year, Fine Print, the library's newsletter, was redesigned to create a unified branded look to complement our website. With the redesign, the newsletter was also expanded to include special interests, articles, room for more program offerings, and information about products and services available for our patrons. I know my copy of the fine print resides on my coffee table, easily accessible. The library has evolved into that place in the community where residents come to learn how to use their new iPad, download a book, or stream music. Patrons can even go beyond the basics and learn how to edit an image using Pixlr, take better photos with a phone, or learn the basics of Dreamweaver. It has been said that technology is taking over the universe. If that's true, then the library will make sure that our residents are educated, aware, and able to acclimate to this technological environment. These changes are part of a grand plan to make the Elmhurst Public Library even better than it already is. Libraries across the country are moving from being solely places for searching and finding to places for creating and innovating. This trend is referred to as the makerspace movement. EPL has positioned itself to be the hub where community members can go to invent, learn, grow, and connect with every stage of life. Programs such as Lego building for kids, knitting and sewing for kids and adults, cooking, card making, and writing encourage patrons to innovate and create while collaborating with other community members who enjoy the same things. To learn more about what our patrons are saying about us, visit the library's website and check out the user stories. These stories highlight patrons' positive experiences and give others inspiration for ways to use the library's resources. We are in the midst of a large-scale second-floor renovation that will bring many new amenities to the community. The additions include media labs, where patrons can produce music or video recordings using high-quality audio and visual equipment and software. A business center featuring semi-private workspaces, laptop-friendly seating, and more small meeting rooms. A print room, where patrons will be able to use a 3D printer and poster printer. A gathering room with soft seating that will be perfect for book clubs, movie viewing, and conversation groups. An enclosed teen lounge with areas for creating art, gaming, computing, and conversation. And a fireplace area surrounded by comfortable chairs for lounging and reading. The renovation is underway and will be completed this spring. We are very happy to be bringing these exciting new spaces to our community. So, whatever one may need, a book, a CD, a movie, or a space, the library is the place in town where residents can go to explore, learn, grow, connect, and create. These and many wonderful things are happening at the library on a regular basis. Before you tonight, you have our budget, which includes not only our operating expenses, but also the funds needed for repayment of our building bonds. The library has levied conservatively for the past few years. We continue that trend this year with a 0.5% increase. Thank you for helping us to make the library such a successful resource for the community. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank the mayor and the city council, as well as the city manager and the rest of the city staff who help us on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Oh, okay. Any questions for the library? Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. Two questions. First, how many years are left on the library? That I believe it's 2002. How many years left on those bonds?
2022.
Okay. Second question. I noticed the projected fund balance at the end of the year is about 4.6 million. Expenditures this year of about 6.3 million, roughly 9 months fund balance. City council policy is 3 to 4 months. We're a little heavier than that now because we know we've got some sizable projects coming down the pipe. Does the library have does the library have a similar policy in terms of fund balance and how much you'd like to have on hand? And then the second part is, so with your fund balance being pretty healthy, are those funds projected for longer-term projects, or do you have those earmarked for something down the road?
The fund balance in our operating fund, with the change in fiscal years, we actually need a greater fund balance now because we will not be collecting any taxes from January until June, so we'll be living on our reserves during that time. We do have projects earmarked coming up besides this big project. The general fund is a fund that has the fund balance, and also we have our capital replacement fund, which is a restricted fund and only earmarked for building repairs, replacements, or improvements.
So the capital, could you go through that capital?
Capital replacement fund?
Which one is that? That's not 210.
No, that has about $1.3 million in it.
Okay, so my question was specific to 210.
Right. That's the fund that we will be using from January until June. We'll
Okay.
be using those reserves in order to actually operate, because we will not collect any money. We'll get our last payment small payment in, I believe, September. We won't collect any other tax money until the following June. So when our fiscal year begins in January, we'll have to live on reserves from January until our first payment in June. So that's why that fund balance is larger now. We usually like to operate with about 6 months' worth of fund balance in our account.
Okay, so at some point then, the fund balance should level set itself, shouldn't it? Because, and if I'm looking at the estimated fund balance at the end of this year, it's 4.635. End of 2015, it's 4.459, and then proposed for 2016 is 4.52.
It's going to, and I think I understand what you're saying, but it's going to decrease, and then it's going to increase again as we get those tax payments in. But we're going to be using about, and I actually don't have the projection with me here, but we'll be using close to almost $3 million between January and June in that budget year until we get that payment in. So it's going to go down again. Then as we get the payments, it's going to go back up again. But then, again, we're going to repeat this cycle.
So what's the projected bottom, the lowest the fund will get is 1.5?
But I would think 1.5, yeah,
Okay.
right.
Other questions? Alderman Braham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Healy asked one of my questions. It was along the lines of what is the policy for the library of fund balance, and you've already answered that. But the other couple comments I have is, it sounds like the library is in a transition mode. You know, back in my day, going to the library as a kid, it was books and magazines and newspapers, and it's good to hear that, you know, now past even the, I guess, years of CDs and DVDs and audio cassettes, et cetera, we're going into where there is a further demand. I know that in the city of Elmhurst as a whole, there's always been a demand for meeting rooms, meeting rooms, meeting rooms. I know the library supplied some of that, but to hear about a business center, not sure exactly how that's gonna be defined and what that's gonna look like, but I'm happy to hear that. The printer, a 3D printer, good and bad. I don't know what people are going to be printing in 3D, kind of scary a little bit. But, I mean, that's exciting technology and a leap forward, probably way above most communities that you would expect to see in a library atmosphere. Video conferencing, I guess that kind of ties into a business center as well. Apple TV was kind of a surprise when I heard that mentioned as well. But kind of going along those lines of the advances it seems like we're going through for the Elmhurst Library, but I look at the budget, and we still have a line item called audio cassettes. Are we still continuing to stock audio cassettes and do anything with audio cassettes? Is there a demand for them? I even noticed down the line on page 190, for those following along, the video cassettes / DVDs, there's nothing budgeted for that. But for 40-03 audio cassettes, there's a significant dollar amount for that.
And that is a mistake. That is supposed to say AV materials. So that line was actually audio cassette years ago. We do not carry audio cassettes anymore. You'll be happy to know. In fact, we haven't carried them for
That's
a
a
few
relief,
years.
yes.
Yes. That would really put us behind. A 3D printer and audio cassettes in the same building would not be great. Good. So that is our AV material line. What we did last year is we combined all of our AV materials that we buy into one line to give us more flexibility in that line. So you'll see that the CD-ROM line isn't funded anymore, the video
Right.
cassette and DVD line isn't funded. All those lines are now included in the AV materials lines. So that's a correction that needs to be made there. The other line in this, just while we're on it, in commodities that is wrong, is the one that says other printed materials. We are not spending $285,000 on other printed materials. That is actually digital content. Digital content is databases, ebooks, streaming music, streaming movies, downloadable movies. It's all of that content. And as you can see, that's increased dramatically and will continue to as we carry less physical content and more digital content.
Great. My only other question was in regards to, and I believe it's relatively new for the library, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's on page 200, the library working cash fund, which I'm sure is different than the city of Elmhurst working cash fund. It seems like there was a healthy budgeted amount last year, and a significant amount of that is being utilized to transfer for operating costs.
Actually, that is being used for this project we're doing that Linda spoke of earlier. That's the second floor renovation that you heard. A lot of that money is going towards that. Library Working Cash Fund has been in existence, as far as I know, for a very long time.
For a very long time?
Yes, since before I was here, since before I think the library was in this building. But we are using that to fund the project that we're doing right now upstairs.
Okay, and what is the library's policy for that fund, I guess, since it's been, I only showed, the reason why I thought it was only a short period of time, because it only shows budgeted on our page 200 for
Yeah.
1 year. So I was looking at that and making a call on that. But what is the typical, because 1.3 million seems significant for a working cash fund? Is that current policy for above $1 million, or do you guys have a policy for that?
We're closing it out. We're actually going to get rid of the working cash fund with this project, and then the next year we'll spend it down. To my knowledge, there isn't a policy on the working cash fund, and this isn't, to my knowledge either, Marilyn and I have discussed this, a traditional working cash fund in libraries, and I'm not sure if it's the same in the city. The working cash funds were set up years ago as funds that you could actually borrow from, and you had to pay them back with interest. This fund is not that. It's called a working cash fund. It was established, I don't know how long ago, to tell you the truth. It's been there. The money hasn't been touched or hasn't been used for many, many years. So we are spending it down and renovating upstairs with it.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? I'll remind the aldermen, if and when possible, for the rest of us following along, try to name a page number and a line item. Actually, Alderman York first, then I'll go to Alderman Levin.
Thank you, Your Honor. On page 187, revenues, intergovernmental revenue, more specifically, state grants,
What line item, Kevin? Alderman York.
02-00, right, intergovernmental revenue, kind of right in the middle of the page.
Got it.
State grants, 55,000 for this year.
Great.
Can you explain the basis for that? I believe it's kind of per capita, but also by taking that money, what we have to do to be able to take that money.
It is a per capita grant administered by the state of Illinois. We have to report to the state library and fulfill certain requirements. They have different requirements that we have to fulfill every year in order to get that grant. It'll be things like the board has to review the collection management policy or take a technology scope of the building and make sure that we're up to par with other libraries in our area. So there's different requirements every year in order for us to qualify for that per capita grant. As you can see, it has increased even though our population isn't 55,000. It's increased because I believe they started funding it a little bit higher per capita. So it's pretty much a grant that we're guaranteed every year as long as we participate in reciprocal borrowing in the state of Illinois. Reciprocal borrowing means that anybody in our community can go to other libraries that participate in that and check out books from their libraries, and other people can check out items from our library too.
York, follow up?
Follow up to that. Thank you. I think that's really important for everybody to understand. I think the library is absolutely fabulous. The only concern I have is that, and you and I've talked about it several times over the course of the years, is, do Elmhurst taxpayers subsidize other cities' residents in having a really nice library? And it's still a concern of mine. I mean, I love it for the residents of Elmhurst. I'd just like to continue for us to work on our fee structures and whatnot where we can and where permissible, so that those other users who aren't paying taxes here in the city of Elmhurst share in the cost of the library experience.
Well, and I have to tell you that fees aren't a great thing for us to charge to other people, because that kind of violates our reciprocal borrowing agreement. But what I can tell you is the library took a big step last year in decreasing the amount of items that are leaving this community to subsidize other communities. We changed our catalog. We got out of a large consortium that we had been in forever. Sometimes it was popular with some people, it was unpopular with other people. However, the reality of it was we were sending almost 8,000 items out of this community a month to other communities, and those items aren't leaving anymore. Now we're sending about 1,200 out a month. So we got out of this big consortium, we joined a much smaller partnership, and many more of our items are staying here. It has decreased workloads, and people have been deployed to other areas of the library where we need them more, because we're no longer sending people out into to the library to collect all these items, to actually physically put them in bins, and then they had to be, we didn't drive them, but a company came and drove them to these 55 to, I think it actually was almost 80 other locations that they could have gone to. So we did take a very big step in doing that. I can assure you that most of our checkouts, and we do track this, come from Elmhurst residents. I believe it's about 88% of our business each month, I'll call it business, of our checkouts come from Elmhurst residents. We protect other services specifically for Elmhurst residents. They're not allowed to reserve or use our meeting rooms. Those are specifically reserved for our patrons that aren't allowed to go to our story times because our story times are just way too popular. They can attend programs on a limited basis as long as our programs aren't full and our patrons are in our program. So we do, and there's also special collections which we do not allow other people to use. None of our digital materials, none of our databases, all kinds of new products. We have streaming movies and streaming music. Nobody else is allowed to do that. Most of our hot copies, which are the books that are really in high demand, those also do not go out to patrons other than our Elmhurst patrons. And I couldn't agree with you more. We're here to serve the Elmhurst community. So.
Thank you.
Alderman Levin?
You might have indirectly answered this in a question from Alderman Healy, but I was looking on page 206 at the various bond issues, and I wasn't, maybe I just wasn't looking in the right place, but is there this tells us what interest is being paid on which series and which principal, but is there a cumulative total of what bond principal balances are outstanding?
I do have my total outstanding.
Yes.
Scott is 2,111,000. Am I right? No, yeah, no, 15 million. $239,483. Sorry, that was one of my
15 million?
payments. $15,239,483.
Okay, and a follow-up on that is, I see that there are certain series where the principal is being paid in 1 in 14, 1 in 15, and 1 in 16. Are those already set in the payment plans for those bonds, or are we selecting which ones we're applying principal based upon the cost of the bond?
There was one big bond issue in 2002 to fund the building, and that was, I think, 18.4 million. That one single original bond issue has been refunded now 2 and 3 different times. So what you see here in 2014, the 7.6 million was the amount. In January, we refunded the 2004 and the 2005 issues, and most of those issues were refundings of the 2002. So money, when we issued the 2014 A series, proceeds from that bond issue were sent to escrow to the tune of that 7.8 million to pay for the callable bonds, the bonds of the 2004 and 2005 when they became callable. That may not be making sense. I
Well,
recognize
I think,
that.
yeah. I
But,
think-
but that's why you see in those 2 years, 2 big numbers, because we had 2 large refundings of those dollars. I think Mary Beth just said maybe 15 million is still outstanding overall. So you can see we refunded between 2013 and 2014, major segment of those, and with some significant savings.
And so those are the 2 amounts under the payments to escrow, 98. And the only other question I had on that is, nothing looks like I just was curious, like in the 2014 budget, there's nothing, but then it pops up. Aren't those not anticipated to be paid?
When, I may not be understanding.
Well, it wasn't,
Payment to escrow?
oh, yeah, it wouldn't show up in a budget for,
We wouldn't, like, we didn't know, when we did the 2014 budget, we didn't know at that time that we were going to do those particular refundings. So we
Okay.
didn't know to budget that. And I think the same thing with the 2013. We did it late in the year, and we didn't know when that budget was being put together that we needed to budget for it. So yes, that expense is showing up because there's no budget. We didn't know it was going to happen.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the library? Alderman Bram.
Just a curiosity, you mentioned about when we were at the larger consortium on what materials were leaving the City of Elmhurst Library. Do you happen to have numbers on what materials were coming to the Elmhurst Library, both in the large consortium and then now that we're out of it?
I do. The amount of materials that were coming every month averaged about 5,000. Now we're averaging about 1,200, 1,200 going, about 1,200 coming in. But what was interesting about the consortium we were in, it didn't mean that we didn't have those 5,000 items here. When we were in the consortium, you put a hold on a book, and if we didn't have it here at the library, it just came from wherever. It didn't mean we didn't own it. It might have meant that it wasn't at this library right now. It might have meant it was coming back on Tuesday, but you weren't going to get that copy. You were going to get the copy from Blue Island that came up here. So it wasn't an accurate picture of, hey, we didn't have these 5,000 items that people didn't want a month. What's interesting is not being in a consortium now and moving to a much more patron-driven model of acquisitions, we are now finding out what we don't have in our collection. And we've implemented a suggest a purchase function on our website, and it was hard for our patrons to get used to. A lot of them said, oh, I don't want you spending money buying a book, and we tried to tell them, well, it costs us a lot more money to get that item from Blue Island, or it costs taxpayers in general a lot more money than actually for us to buy it and get it here. Not to mention, if it was a popular item that someone wanted, chances are we should have been buying it anyway. So now we know what we're not getting. Patrons are suggesting, they're really fully embracing the suggest a purchase function, and they're helping us to curate the collection. So prior to this, we did not know what we didn't have because we were just getting it from someplace else. So, yeah.
Interesting data, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will thank certainly city staff for preparing the budget and kicking us off, but I also want to thank the library and the library board for their time this evening and their explanations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I don't even have my agenda in front of me. I'm going to go with, what do you got?
Adjournment.
Just adjournment, Patty? You're good with adjournment?
I'm good with it.
Clerk Spencer is requesting an adjournment. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman York, second by Alderman Deuter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.